All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into something I think we all wonder about. What exactly is going on in our brains when we're juggling a million different things on our screens at once? Okay, let's be real for a second. How many of you right now are maybe scrolling through your phone while you're listening to this? Or, texting while a show's on in the background? It's super common. So let's get into it.
Well, this constant juggling act actually has a name. It's called media multitasking. But the real question is, what's it doing to our brains? Like on a biological level.
So to start figuring that out, we're going to look at a really interesting study from 2014 that literally peered inside the brains of people who do this all the time. What these researchers were trying to figure out was, is there a physical, measurable difference in the brain structure of someone who's a heavy multitasker versus someone who isn't? And you know what? They found one. This quote right here is the big takeaway from their paper. People who multitask more on media showed, and I'm quoting here, smaller gray matter density in the anterior cingulate cortex. Okay, so what on earth is the ACC and why should we care about its density? Okay, so think of the ACC as your brain's command center. It's like the ultimate mental traffic cop. Its job is to manage all the conflicting information flying around, spot errors, and keep your thoughts and emotions in check. It's what's supposed to help you focus when you've got a ton of different things vying for your attention, like multiple media streams. And this chart really just drives the point home. It visualizes exactly what the study found. Look at that. The heavy multitaskers, on average, had lower gray matter density in that critical region compared to the light multitaskers. It's a pretty stark difference. Right, so seeing this immediately brings up that classic scientific puzzle, the whole chicken or the egg question. Is multitasking actually changing the brain, or do people who are born with this kind of brain structure just tend to multitask more?
See, the problem is that 2014 study was what they call cross-sectional. It's just a snapshot in time. So it shows a link, a correlation, but it can't tell us which one is causing the other. Are people with a smaller ACC just less able to filter out distractions, so they multitask more? Or does the act of multitasking itself shrink that brain region? We just don't know from this study alone.
Okay, but the plot really thickens when we throw another piece into the mix, creativity. Because a more recent study, this one a longitudinal study, which is key, gives us another clue. This new study zeroed in on something called divergent thinking. It's a fancy term, but it's really just a key part of creativity. It's your brain's ability to brainstorm. Like if I asked you, how many different things can you do with a paperclip? Your ability to come up with a bunch of weird and unique answers, that's divergent thinking.
So get this. They followed 609 junior high students over a period of time. And the results were pretty clear. The kids who multitasked the most at the beginning of the study, they had lower creativity scores 6 months down the line. And because this study tracked them over time, it starts to look less like a chicken and egg problem and more like the multitasking might actually be causing the drop in creativity.
So right now, the story seems pretty simple, right? Multitasking looks bad. But this is where it gets really weird. The researchers uncovered this bizarre, unexpected twist that involves the part of our brain that's supposed to be the CEO.
And that CEO is what's known as executive function. This is the set of mental skills that lets you plan, focus, remember instructions, and, you guessed it, juggle multiple tasks. It's your self-control, your working memory, all that good stuff. And this right here is the big aha moment of the study. So, follow this logic. High media multitasking was linked to lower executive function. Okay, that makes sense. You're scattered, so your CEO is weaker. But here's the twist. That lower executive function was then linked to higher divergent thinking, or better brainstorming. What? How on earth does that work? Well, the running theory is something called the flexibility pathway. The idea is that a brain with slightly less cognitive control, a brain that's not so good at shutting out distractions, might actually be more likely to wander. And in that wandering, it bumps into new, unexpected connections between ideas that a super-focused brain might miss. It's kind of like a less focused mind can lead to more out-of-the-box thinking.
Okay, so does this mean we should all start multitasking like crazy to become more creative?
Well, not so fast. Let's look at the bottom line here, the final score. Because here's the catch. Even with that weird, indirect creative boost, the researchers found that the overall, direct impact of media multitasking on creativity was still a big negative. This number right here, -0.23, that's the hard data.
It shows just how strong that direct negative link is. When you add everything up, multitasking still hurts.
To put it in plain English, that direct negative hit from multitasking on creativity was way stronger than any tiny indirect benefit it might have had. The main takeaway is that the multitasking itself was, overall, bad for the students' creative skills. The small silver lining was completely washed out by the bigger storm cloud.
All right, so let's wrap this all up. What are the key takeaways? Well, we know heavy-medium multitasking is connected to physical differences in the brain's control tower, even if we're still sorting out the chicken and egg part of that. We also now have evidence that it directly predicts lower creativity over time. And yeah, there's that fascinating little twist, where a less focused brain might brainstorm better, but, and this is the big but, that effect gets totally wiped out by the much larger direct negative impact. So look, the science here doesn't really give us a simple do this, not that kind of answer. But it does give us some really powerful information to think about. And it leaves us with a pretty important question to ask ourselves about our own digital lives, doesn't it?